So there is an exact moment that theoretically you win the retirement game. And the odds are that you're just going to walk straight past it without even noticing. It won't be the day that you literally hand your notice in and leave your job. It will be years and years and years before that on some random Tuesday, and you'll be sat there answering emails like it's just any other morning, essentially. But from that day on, whether you put in another pound into your investments or pensions or not, you'll theoretically retire on the income and lifestyle that you were aiming for. Just basically done. You've won the game. The maths has quietly taken the responsibility of handling all of that for you. It's taken the job off of you, right? And hardly anyone spots it actually happening, because we've all been absolutely trained to stare at probably the entire wrong number, right? Every calculator, every headline, every bloke in a suit in a stock photo, they'll all point at exactly the same thing, the big one. £1 million at 65. The enormous figure sitting at the end of your 40-year corridor that you're supposed to sprint down without ever stopping. And if you're anything like the people that I've worked with over the years, you'll do one thing. You'll glance at it, feel slightly sick, and just get on with your day and be a bit sort of disillusioned. But there's a smaller number sat in front of that million or whatever figure it is that you have in your head. And that's the one that actually decides how this all ends. Okay? Think about it like riding a bike up a hill. Okay? Horrible, awful, right? Legs burning, heart racing, sweating away, essentially. Now, the moment that ride is actually won, right? It isn't when you like roll into your driveway at the end of that bike ride. It's the second you crest the top of that hill, isn't it? That's the whole thing right there. You could take your feet off the pedals and just let gravity finish the job for you, and you would still arrive on time, right? We've all had that feeling, right? You know, when you can just coast going down a hill and all the hard work is done and you're just like, oh, thank God for that. I don't have to do this anymore. Well, your money, your retirement, your pensions has got a version of that too. It's called your coast number, believe it or not. It's the amount of money that you need invested today so that if you added absolutely nothing ever again, no contributions, no top-ups, no sacrifice, compound growth would carry you through to your full retirement target by the time that you get there. So it's not the finish line. It's not that big, horrible target that you see sometimes. It's the moment the finish line becomes inevitable, essentially, right? And I'll be honest with you, I spent a long stretch of my career not really focusing on this, not really teaching this to the people that I was working with and my clients, or certainly not getting them to focus on it for sure. I'd sit with people and pretty much do what everybody does, right? Push the contributions up, squeeze the budget, chase the big number at the end. And I just completely missed that the most meaningful milestone happens way before that, somewhere in the middle of the journey. Some of the people in front of me had gone past their journey, their moment in the sand years earlier. And I'm ashamed to say that genuinely, like, neither of us knew at the time. I was congratulating them for theoretically just pedaling harder at the top of the hill than they were while they were going down. Doesn't make any sense at all. So the question is this: where is your top of the hill, right? Where's your crest? Well, basically, to work it out, there's 2 steps. And honestly, if you've got a pen or a bit of paper anywhere near you, just grab it, because you'll probably want to do this on the back of something as we're talking along, right? It's not that complicated. Step 1, your target, right? What you need to do is take what you want to spend each year in retirement and nice and simply multiply it by 25. So if you wanted, say, £40,000 a year, and that is £1 million, right? £40,000 worth of spending, 25, £1 million. Now, you're already probably beating me to it, but remember to factor in other income sources into this. So things like the state pension, if you're due a state pension. So again, if you want to spend, £40,000 a year in retirement, just make sure that you take off your state pension entitlement or whatever it might well be, or if you've got any other guaranteed income sources to knock off this figure. But in theory, if you just said to yourself, I want £40,000 a year from my money purchase pensions or from my investment portfolio, whatever it might well be, times that figure by 25 and you have your target, right? Super simple. Now 25, and again, you're probably already there ahead of me, is just the flip side of withdrawing around 4% a year from your money. So that is the rough rule of thumb. And it is rough, right? There's people that will argue it all day long under the sun, but it's a really good blunt tool and a rough rule of thumb for what a pot of money that's invested sensibly can hand you in terms of long-term income with a good enough probability of not eating into it. So the returns keeping up with the withdrawals effectively, right? Now, step 2 is kind of where this gets interesting. What you do is you discount the target back to today, meaning that you work out what it's worth in sort of today's money, because a pound invested now isn't a pound at 65, for instance. It's considerably more, right? And the further out you are, the more work the market does and the investments do instead of you and your heavy lifting. So let's assume a 5% a year return after inflation. And these are what the numbers roughly land like. 30 years out, you need a quarter of your target. 20 years out, you need 40%. 10 years out, you need to already have 60% of your target. So let's look at some real numbers now, right? Let's say that you're 35 and you want £1 million at aged 65. Your coast number is about £230,000. So that's how much money you'd have to have at age 35 in order to organically reach £1 million at 60. Now, the same person at 45 needs £377,000. At 55, it's 614,000. Same destination, right? £1 million at 65, but a wildly different entry fee depending on what time you show up to this journey, right? It's super important to make sure that you get your head around this concept. Now, here's the version worth actually remembering, right? Super, super simple, because you'll never need all the fancy tables or anything else again. All you need to do is remember this. Your coast number roughly halves every 14 years you are from retiring. 14 years earlier, you need half the money. That is essentially the whole game in one simple line, which is why two people on identical salaries can end up living completely different lives. One gets 60 grand working for them in their late 20s and then more or less kind of stops thinking about it. The other starts properly at 42 and does everything right from there. You know, the bigger contributions, better fund choices, the lot, 14 years apart. And the second one is climbing a hill twice as long. Not because they were careless or did anything wrong, they just set off slightly later. This is this paradox of time. Now, obviously, this is a very simplified version, but it's very true. And you know what? I had a bloke on a call a while back who was kind of mid-50s, and he opens up the call with, look, I think I've left it all too late, which by a distance, I would say is the most common the common opening concern that I get in my coaching. So if that's the sentence going around your head right now, let me tell you, you are in very normal company. Don't stress. Anyway, so this guy, we sat down, we ran his actual numbers rather than just his feelings and how he felt about his progression and so on and so forth. It turns out that he went past his coast numbers about 2 years before. We spent all that time working it out, and I was like, mate, you're absolutely fine. He had spent that time like white knuckling his savings rate through what he had called, self-admittedly, a really, really stressful stretch of his life for a target that he'd already reached, right? He wasn't behind at all. He was literally stood up on the pedals, hammering away like he was in some sort of spin class, right? After the road had completely flattened out for him. And that's the thing about all of this. It doesn't sort of announce itself. Nothing flashes on the screen. No letter arrives for your door. Your balance looks exactly the same as it did the day before, which is the only reason that so many people just sail past this concept. So let's actually say that you go out, you do all the maths, you do everything we've just talked about, and it turns out that you are past your coast figure. What actually changes for you? Well, the key point is that nothing has to change, and that's sort of the point. You don't stop working at that point, but you in theory could, right? In theory, you could stop saving. Sorry, not stopping work, but stopping aggressive saving into that fund, because every pound that you earn from that day has significantly less impact on the trajectory towards the target, and may be better off for you to, I don't know, spend, enjoy, because the retirement problem is being handled in the background by compound interest rather than by you specifically. And when you kind of strip out the maths of that, that's what people are actually after when they talk about money, isn't it? Right? This is what it's all about. It's not, the yacht. It's not retiring at 38 on a beach somewhere and sipping sangrias. It is just the ability to make a decision that just isn't about money for once, right? Maybe working 4 days instead of 5. Maybe a job that pays you, I don't know, £15,000 less, but doesn't ruin your Sunday evenings. Maybe a year out to, I don't know, care for an elderly parent or have a sabbatical. Or the quiet, underrated one, right? I've seen this all the time in people who achieve this. Hearing the word at work, restructuring in a meeting and not absolutely panicking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You've swapped, I have to earn a lot for, I just have to earn enough for my lifestyle today and not necessarily factor my future self in so much into that equation. Two completely different lives. And the gap between them, genuinely, I suspect 90% of you watching this is probably way smaller than you possibly think it is. Now, here's the thing. I would rather you heard the flaws in all of this from me than found them out the hard way. So, all of this whole equation, okay, hangs on real return holding up, okay? And the markets, any investment portfolio doesn't hand you 5% a year politely every year in some neat straight line like you see on these calculators and these projections, right? They give you something like that on average over across decades, but with some genuinely grim stretches buried in the middle, right? There has been a lot of recency bias where people have just seen the stock market go up, okay? It doesn't happen like that. The last 10, 15 years have been unprecedented, okay, in terms of investment returns or the sequence of those investment returns, i.e. just every single year, bar what? 2018 and 2022 doesn't always work like that. So if your first 10 years of coasting after that point happen to be one of the grim periods of time, your exact amount might actually slide backwards and you might need to start putting money in again. It also assumes that you leave your pot completely alone, essentially. I mean completely. The second you start sort of dipping in for a new kitchen or a new car or a new holiday, you're at the bottom of that hill again with a bike on your shoulder and you've got to get on with it. So this is not a promise, okay? It's not a guarantee. There is no such thing as a guarantee. It's a milestone, right? It's a milestone that also can change in certain circumstances as well. So it's not a guarantee. It's not a promise, but it's something that does exist and you need to acknowledge it. But let's say you run it anyway. Annual spending times by 25, and then halve it for every 14 years between now and the day you like to stop. Super simple, right? 90 seconds. That's as easy as it is. And if you do that, you'll know something that you can't unknow, right? Either way, your moment, the exact point, is like a long way off, and you know now exactly that you're pedaling towards something that's aggressive rather than just some vague 40-year fog, or it's a good deal closer than the calculators were actually kind of letting on, right? And that's the difference between grinding away at what you think is the hard bit and finding out that you crested the top of that hill a while back and nobody thought to tell you. Okay? Really super important. Now, I will be honest about all of this. There will be a lot of people watching this that probably feel quite far behind, at least compared to where they think they should be, depending on how much they earn. And the sadness is that if that's you, you might well have had the thought to yourself along that point that, like, there's no point in doing any of this. There's no point in investing and trying to build wealth now. Surely the game is gone if you're 40 and you haven't started yet. That could not be further from the truth. But if you are starting to invest at that point or getting serious about building wealth and you're a little bit later than you might like, then you'll want to watch this video here next, because there are some genuinely key critical mistakes that you will definitely want to avoid if that is you. So please give it a click and I will see you there.